Okay, so I was asked to take a look at this, so I'm gonna take a look at it. Gaijin Goombah's video on the For Honor Shinobi. Lots of folks wanted me to talk about it, so I figured I might as well. I'm not going to do his one on the Shugoki because there's just not enough there to really talk about. He gets most of that stuff right. But the Shinobi video, yeah, there's some stuff I can talk about, so I'll make it quick. This video is super short, so I shouldn't take too much time on it. But I ask that you please stay tuned after I go through his video so I can say something very important. But first, let's take a look. Here we go.
Hey everyone, Gaijin
and Goombah here. Why are you a cardboard cutout?
Okay, look, I totally blanked on the fact that For Honor was releasing the Shinobi this week, and I kinda need this out the door ASAP, because this was definitely a ninja I very much wanted to cover on the show.
Well, this isn't gonna be weird at all.
I know the timing of this video is a little strange, everyone, so I guess just consider it Witch Ninja episode 1.5. Anyway, let's not waste any more time and figure out if For Honor Shinobi is an accurate retelling of the past.
Looking at that image you used, do you really think that's an accurate retelling of the past? You say later in this very video that real ninja wore blue, not black. Well, you're gonna call this an accurate retelling of the past? I'm nitpicking, keep going.
Or if it's just another Naruto.
Judging from that goofy run, I'd say it's the latter. Also, get a load of the weapon he's using.
Their weapon, the Kusarigama, is like no other.
That's totally not a Kusarigama. Granted, it's a sickle on a chain, which is what the word actually means, and yeah, actual ninjas would use this very thing in combat, but this is more of a dual kama setup. A real Kusarigama is this. A sickle with a chain anywhere between 1 to 8 feet long, ending in a heavy weight. Utilized as a reached, ranged weapon, the chain could be used to wrap around the opponent's weapon to disarm them, used to wrap around their arms and leg to trip them or at least stagger them, or you could just bash the opponent in the head with the weight. All of the above options gave ninja superb range over the samurai's katana and allowed for not only control, but nimble movement.
Okay, speaking from a martial artist's perspective, weapons like the Kusarigama are risky. Firstly, I said in my own Shinobi video, but the Kusarigama was not strictly a ninja weapon. The samurai made use of them too, so we can't call it an exclusive ninja weapon. The Kusarigama's strength lies in the rotation of the ball and chain, creating an area of control around the user to discourage an enemy from entering it, allowing the user to buy time and wait for openings. The heavy weight could be used for striking certainly, but seeing as most samurai wore armor on their bodies, it likely wouldn't do that much damage when striking, unless it got a direct hit on the face or hit a weak spot in the armor, which is a big if when swinging a rotating ball. Not only that, but once you strike with it, it takes a minute to get the weight spinning again. The strike must hit or you risk losing half of your weapon's effectiveness. And then there's the kama. Kama are short range and not designed well for being weapons. The bladed portion is on the inside of the blade, so cutting is difficult, and the only real way to make it work effectively is through puncturing. This is why you won't see the Kusarigama on the battlefield very often. It's a weapon that requires precision, training, and lots of experience to use effectively, and there is a large margin for error. Another problem we see here is the tripping up portion. There is a strange stigma in the fighting world that once you trip up an opponent and they fall, they automatically lose. And this is actually pretty wrong in most cases. Like any jujitsu, judo, and wrestling practitioner will tell you that a lot of fighting ends up on the ground. And want to know what the samurai were trained in? Jujitsu. Once the samurai's on the ground, the best thing a ninja could do is run for their lives. Getting in close with the kama is putting yourself in range of the samurai, who might still be armed with a spear or sword. They're also armored, meaning you have fewer openings to take advantage of. Plus, what's stopping the victim who hits the ground or gets tangled in the Kusarigama to do this? In my humble opinion, and please note that this is an opinion, as I have never lived in feudal Japan, but I believe the Kusarigama was most likely used as a distraction or discipline-based weapon. The Kusarigama creates a distraction to keep an enemy at a distance and possibly a chance to disarm an enemy or trip them up. And it provides a decent defense if the opponent gets in too close. But I disagree when Gaijin says it allowed mobility or nimbleness. Keeping the chain constantly spinning requires concentration and rotation of the wrist. Focusing on keeping from hitting yourself means you must move carefully. Note how in none of the videos he's showing do the martial artists move fast or quickly. They move carefully and with focused steps, if they even move at all. If anything, the Kusarigama limits your mobility because you're focused on keeping a weighted ball spinning so it keeps your enemy back and doesn't hit you. And finally, and I promise I'm almost done, please don't take this video as gospel. These are demonstration videos on proper Kusarigama techniques, and you'll notice the opponents are rarely moving or attacking first. In real combat, an enemy would never provide you such an adequate opening. Why did he let go of his sword? Why didn't he pull back on it or dodge when he saw the weight coming? You could argue because the attack surprised him, but it could also be because he's demonstrating a point. Real battle is not so cut and dry. I should know. I've been in plenty of fights outside of the octagon and off the mat. I'd really care not to remember those. Okay, let's move on.
Well, I can agree with you that the double sickle the Shinobi in For Honor uses isn't quite a Kusarigama, but that doesn't exactly mean that it isn't used the exact same way as the real Kusarigama.
But how does that work? I mean, you either have a long chain to work with or you don't.
Well, here's the thing. Shinobi would use kama attached to chains that would wrap around their arms, which allowed for not only unique weapon manipulation, but would be really hard to disarm. However, with only having 2 sickles as weapons, you'd have to get in close without any sort of distraction to make it happen. But, thanks to the miracle of video game logic, the game's Shinobi actually has a much longer chain to work with. We just don't really see it.
Wait, what do you mean?
Look at how the Shinobi fights in For Honor. They're always about 3 body lengths away and have the ability to throw out their chain sickle and then get in close when their opponents are staggered, which is exactly how real-life Shinobi would fight. If forced into conflict, Ninja would begin combat in one of 2 ways. The first would be to ambush their opponent by throwing the large metal weight to stun them, then quickly subdue the target using the chain. Afterwards,
This right here, this is what I'm talking about. Why are you just laying there and taking it, my dude? Kick him in the gut. Get back on your feet. Slice him up. This is all for the sake of demonstration, I know, but in real combat, the Shinobi leaves himself wide open, and the samurai would be wearing armor, so the initial strike to the chest or helmet probably wouldn't stun them so easily.
It didn't take much to land the killing blow with the sickle. The second would be the ninja beginning the fight with the chain already out and swinging. This provides a huge spatial advantage for the Shinobi, as their target wouldn't easily be able to predict
Stab him.
where that metal weight was going to strike. From here, the ninja had a lot of options. They could wrap the chain around their opponent's weapon to disarm them, wrap the chain around their opponent themselves to stagger or trip them, or just straight up clock their opponent with the chain's weight. It mattered little what the choice was because the objective of all of them was to throw off your opponent. After that was accomplished, all it took was one good sickle strike to the chest, back, throat, and the fight was over. Now look at For Honor Shinobi. They are forever staying about 2 to 3 body lengths away from their opponent, as their chain sickle just has that kind of crazy reach. But once their opponent is hit, they're completely staggered, which allows for the Shinobi to either get in close and land a few hits, or pull the opponent to you and get your licks in that way. Though it's pretty physically impossible, or at the very least unreliable when it comes to real combat, the way the Shinobi utilizes the Kusarigama is pretty darn identical to what the real Shinobi did, utilizing their chain's reach to screw with their opponents and then going for the kill.
You know, I can kinda see that.
But I cannot. Firstly, I'm not going to go into everything about how Shinobi would avoid combat and how they were mostly just spies, but what I will say is that you're putting way more faith in the Kusarigama than you actually should. In the clips we see the warrior snaring the neck, breaking pots, and doing all kinds of really cool things, but again, these are demonstrations. Now I know what some of you are saying, but they would be trained extensively and be really good at using them. Well, maybe, but I ask you this too. Basketball players train extensively, working hard to make shots and baskets from various positions and angles. But on the court, in the actual game, when being pressured and blocked by other players, do they always make the shot? Do they always make it 100% of the time? When all the variables are controlled and taken into account, of course the basket is going to be easy to make and it's going to be more accurate most of the time. But the uncontrolled variables from real games are going to make these baskets more difficult. The same goes with combat. The Kusarigama looks beautiful, and much like a hypnotizing presence, the spinning ball and chain can create mesmerizing sights that draws in the enemy. But in the heat of battle, when stress is high and sudden reflexes and twitches make the difference between life and death, can you really trust yourself to be that accurate? To be that precise? There's a reason this isn't a mainstream weapon in battle. Sorry.
Plus, it's not just the weapons that make the For Honor Shinobi accurate, but the visual aesthetics as well. The Shinobi looks like it has all the basic clothing. The Zukin, the Uwagi, Hakama, Teko, tabi, and waraji. And that isn't the only thing, check out that belt line. The shinobi carries a length of rope as well as an iron claw around the waist. This is known as a kagi nawa, basically your garden variety grappling hook, but condensed enough that it was easy to carry without being a burden while sneaking around.
Samurai use this too, not just a ninja tool. Samurai had to scale walls when sieging sometimes.
There's also a large gourd which I suppose could be filled with water, but would more likely be filled with kusuri, various chemical compounds that would vary depending on the mission. Bug repellent, poisons, antidotes, blood coagulants, basically medicinal tools.
And that's just one skin. Check this out. Alternate skins have other tools like kunai, which, surprise surprise everyone, weren't specifically throwing daggers, but rather everyday tools for cutting, scraping, and prying. Sure, it was thrown from time to time, but given its design, it really wasn't built for that.
Okay, I agree with that. You are correct. I agree wholeheartedly.
Lastly, there's this alternate skin, which features a sheath sai, which should be familiar to anyone who knows about the Ninja Turtles.
The sai were an Okinawan weapon and would not be featured in common Japanese use until well after the Shinobi era. This was added probably because of pop culture reasons.
But there's also two spherical objects around the neck. Now, it's difficult to tell, but it's very possible these are a type of kaki, or tool that utilizes gunpowder or fire, and Ninja used a lot of these. According to my research, there were 91 fire tools of destruction, 13 signal fire tools, and 106 different kinds of torches. And in order to accomplish all of that, it said that ninja clans created 200 some odd unique types of gunpowder used for smoke, light, noise, and general damage.
I tried my best to look up how true this is, and I found nothing. The way you mix gunpowder and chemicals can create different effects, sure, but consider for a moment that while explosives were likely used, why would there be a need to develop 200 different types? I don't find that believable. Now, if someone can please find me the source of the 200 types of gunpowder, like something that proves that, I'd love to learn about it. This is not me issuing a challenge by any means. I'm genuinely interested to know how true this is. If they really did develop 200 different kinds of gunpowder, that's awesome. I'd love to know about it. But what were they, and why did they invent them, and what was each one's individual use? I mean, I can't think of more than 5 uses for different kinds of gunpowder. You have your kind for blast damage, shrapnel damage, flashbang, gas, and actually that's just 4 right there. Not a lot left I can think of, unless you count like a stink bomb or something. But again, I can't think of that many different uses for gunpowder.
For this skin though, it looks a lot like a horokuhia. Bombs made by sealing gunpowder in a wick between 2 halves of a ceramic ball sealed with rope or paper. And if you look closely on the shinobi, you can see a thin crease on the 2 spheres which heavily resemble horokuhia bombs. It's just too bad you can't use them in combat.
In any case, I think it's fair to assume that Ubisoft really is doing its homework when it comes to For Honor. It's sad that there's been so much controversy with the game's online functionality, because when it comes to historical and accurate combat, For Honor really does shine in that regard. Even something insanely historically esoteric like Shinobi are represented pretty darn well in this game. Therefore, when it comes to which are good and which are bad, I can safely say that the For Honor Shinobi is definitely a good one. But thanks for watching, everyone.
The Shinobi in For Honor, like many Shinobi in popular media, is a result of pop culture and fabricated myth being brought together for an entertaining warrior with cool abilities and skills. I love Shinobi in For Honor, and I think they're really cool in design and battle usage. But if you asked me if they were accurate, I would say no. Alright guys, thanks for sticking with me this long. So now let me talk briefly about Gaijin Goombah. I still will gladly do response videos to his content, but this will be probably my only response to his Witch Ninja series, because honestly, how do I say this? I looked online to see if anyone else had responded to any of these videos like Metatron or Andrew Cummins or even folks like Noggin, but no one has, and I wondered why. And here's why I think. Because his videos all suffer from a similar problem, and if I took the time to discuss all of his videos, I'd end up sounding like a broken record. So to clear the air, here is my ultimate problem with Gaijin Goombah's ninja videos. Note that I said ninja videos, not all of his videos, his ninja videos. I said it in my Nobushi video, and I'll say it again. I have nothing against Gaijin Goombah as a person or as a content creator. His videos are entertaining and his production value is far superior to my own. But he's drunk the pop culture Kool-Aid in a big way, and his own rules are very inconsistent sometimes. For example, in one video where he talks about Soul Calibur's Taki, he says,
I mean, all things considered, don't you think Taki's a little big to be a ninja?
Well, let's look at this historically. According to the Iga-ryu Ninja Museum in Iga, quote, ninja must weigh 60 kilograms or roughly 132 pounds or less. This number was so specific that ninjas would exercise with a unique weight training known as Kome Aware Ipyo, where they would straight up deadlift 60-kilogram bales of rice to make sure they had the strength to lift their own bodies with ease, allowing them to move and climb in ways the average person couldn't. Now let's break down Taki. According to the Soul Calibur wiki, Taki is 5'7" and 117 pounds. So at least as far as weight's concerned, she's light enough to make the cut.
Yeah, but she's still also 5'7". You were there yourself. How tall were the mannequins used to show off the ninja Shozoku outfits and armors in Iga?
Honestly, probably no more than 4.5 feet.
See, that's my point. Taki is the second tallest female character in the roster, and easily a foot higher than most of her male counterparts according to history. And then there are these things.
Okay, so firstly, I wouldn't trust everything you see in the Iga History Museum. It's a very entertaining place, but they have a bad habit of selling the pop culture myth in a big way. After a careful read of Stephen Turnbull's book, Ninja Unmasking the Myth, he points out that the Iga History Museum has, quote, a blend of entertainment with irritation. He further says, quote, it succeeds to some extent in its aim of presenting the reality behind the ninja concept, although the fantasy ninja and the historical shinobi tend to get horribly mixed up, and if there is a conflict between them, the commercial needs triumph. He also points out in his book that Japan wants to sell the pop culture myth of the shinobi because it pushes the cool Japan idea that helps sell them to Western audiences. They know that if everyone believes ninjutsu is a martial art used by ancient ninja, it will draw people to spend money and train in it. They know that if they have a museum that further reinforces the ninja myth while intermingling it with some history to sell authenticity, people will come and spend money to see it. So I really don't trust the museum on everything it says, and I highly doubt there was an actual weight and height requirement for all ninja. But, for the sake of argument, let's pretend that there was one. Let's say that this is actually one of the true aspects of the ninja. You had to be 60 kilograms and at least 5 feet tall. Okay. In another video, he asked how ninja were the predators, the Yautja. And in the entire video, he never once brings up the fact that the predators were all nearly 7 feet tall. Just by their height and weight alone, if we're staying consistent with his rules, it shouldn't even be up for debate. I'm not denying him the right to speculate. I'm saying his own rules lack consistency depending on what he's discussing. Why is Taki from Soul Calibur sidelined because of her height and clothing choice, but since the Predator uses stealth and some similar weapons, he's more close to the real deal?
Or retractable. I mean, I guess they kinda are reminiscent of the Roppo Shuriken that historical ninjas were said to use, but I don't know about this one, my dude.
Well, you say that now, but despite how big or small the Predator Shuriken may be, it's how the Predators use them that makes them so similar.
Granted, they do say at the end that Predator isn't quite like a ninja because he has a code of honor while the shinobi couldn't care less about honor, but my point is this. If a rule of thumb regarding shinobi is established, you must remain consistent with it. And Gaijin Goombah doesn't always do that. Then there's some of his source material. He, like many supposed authorities on the shinobi, get a lot of their information from sources like the Mansen Shukai, the Shonenki, and the Ninpiden, 3 ancient books that are said to hold the secrets of shinobi throughout the years. Except quite a few historians have considered these books very inaccurate and misleading. Turnbull himself mentions them in his book where he says, and I quote, Mansen Shukai is a large work, and much of it makes dull reading, unless it is enlivened by imaginative commentators desperate to find within it the factors that modern movies have led them to regard as authentic ninjutsu. Such careless retrospective interpretations have produced exaggerations in the past. I won't go deep into the Shinoninki and Ninpiden here in this video, but if y'all really want to, I might do a separate video discussing these documents and talking about where they fail as historical documentation and where they succeed. But my point here is this. The Mansen Shukai, or Bansen Shukai, it is also sometimes called, is not an entirely trustworthy source. The motivation in its writing is speculatory, and the time period in which it was written is also a key to its lack of authenticity. It is said to have been written in 1679, which is a good 70 years after the shinobi were an essential part of Japanese military. At this point in time, Japan had little need for shinobi as the Warring States period was at its end. So why write them? Some might try to preserve the history of these arts or even just make money, maybe so they could be passed on to a future generation. Or it's more likely to sell a product. For example, Excalibur, the famous sword of King Arthur, is not a real sword, and if it actually existed, as stated by many historical experts, it would not have looked as beautiful and ornate as it appears, because real swords probably wouldn't have looked like that. But if you put a pretty replica of this sword like that up for sale and watch the people, and then you can just watch the people run to it and add it to their collection. Why? Because it doesn't matter if it's real or not. It's cool. It's mystical. It's what the media wants you to see. They're not going to show Excalibur as an ugly piece of crap sword, or make it look authentic to what would have actually been an actual sword of the time. They're going to use the ornate, beautiful sword. Think about the sword in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, the sword of Godric Gryffindor. Many people have pointed out just how inaccurate that sword looks. Of course the sword is about the size for a 12-year-old boy. It has to be, because it fits what's needed for the story. But if it's actually the sword of a grown man and a long sword of the time period, that sword looks very inaccurate. But it doesn't matter. It's what sells. It's what the public wants to see. Therefore, sell it.
I love historically accurate swords. I love historically accurate swords. I love historically accurate swords. I love historically accurate Why?
I'm not saying everything in the ninja manuals that I brought up, or in the museum that I brought up earlier, are all wrong, and I'm not saying Gaijin Goombah is deliberately misinforming anyone. But I do believe he's putting way more faith and value on these sources than he should, or anyone should. And he often attributes things to ninjas as pioneered by them, excluding any idea that they could also have been employed by others. But one of my favorites that he does is in his Ninja Turtle video. He brings up that the most ninja thing the Ninja Turtles do. The most ninja thing, the absolute most ninja thing they do is this. The Kuji-in.
Now we come to the Turtles' most one-to-one, true-to-life ninja technique. Out of everything we've covered so far in all of the different universes spanning the entire lifetime of this franchise, this is the most truly ninja thing we've seen come out of TMNT.
Rin, Pyo, To, Sha, Kai, Jin, Ret, Zai, Zen.
While the healing hand technique and its healing powers might seem like a fantasy, the ability that Splinter uses and subsequently teaches Leonardo isn't 100% fiction. It's another technique we tend to come back to on a regular basis here on Witch Ninja. Literally, word for word, this is known as the Kuji-in, or 9 cuts. Rin, Pyo, To, Sha, Kai, Jin, Ret, Zai, Zen. 9 hand gestures accompanied by chants that ninja believed open up their ability to manipulate their body's energy. Popular media would have you believe that these hand gestures, or mudras as they're called, somehow unlock some kind of ninja magic to create gouts of flame or turn invisible. But the truth is, ninja utilize these and many other mudras in combination with meditative chants in order to overcome inhuman situations, such as extreme fear, stress, and other disorders of the body. In the case of TMNT, after being poisoned by the mutated Karai, Leo regains his composure and overcomes his poisoned state by chanting the Kuji-in in meditation.
Sha, Ju, Son, Rin, Pyo, To, Son, Kai, Jin, Retsu, Zai, Zen.
Though the Kuji-in couldn't immediately stave off poison as in the show, there is scientific evidence to support the theory that the Kuji-in had physical and psychological impacts on the body. At Mie University, Dr. Teruhisa Komori has been researching the effects of mudras on the human body by studying brain waves of individuals placed in stressful situations, one group having performed the hand gestures and another group that had not. Dr. Komori's results showed that ninja who utilized the hand mudras during stressful situations were actually able to stabilize their composure for short periods of time, with stress waves dramatically lowered while mental relaxation increased as shown by the red and blue bars respectively. For Leo to stop and execute the Kuji-in in order to regain composure is not so unlike what a real ninja would do given the circumstance. Under intense levels of stress such as fleeing, hiding from sentries who are a bit too close for comfort, or yes, maybe even being poisoned, ninja would perform various chants and mudras in order to stabilize themselves. And if Dr. Komori's research is legit, there might be more truth to this technique than we give it credit for.
He calls this a truly ninja thing, which is already a problem because it wasn't. The ninja didn't invent this. They might have repurposed it. It was developed in Chinese Taoism and is now widely used in Shugendo. But not only that, the idea of performing mantras or hand seals to calm the body isn't unique to the ninja either. Some modern psychologists help alleviate panic attacks in their patients by having them count numbers out of order, like 1, 2, 7, 4, 12, 9, 13. Because the mind can't panic easily when it's forced to focus on something else. Counting numbers out of order forces the mind to concentrate on something unusual or out of the ordinary, just like making hand symbols while reciting a mantra. Your mind is elsewhere and refocusing on something else. This isn't strictly a ninja discipline. And finally, and this is the last thing I'll bring up before I call it quits, I feel like he doesn't question anything he's told. When it comes to history, you have to not only read the references for information, but also for what makes practical sense. Gaijin Goombah seems to worship the ninja, like, it's almost a little uncomfortable sometimes.
And the Dirt Ninja did, because above all else, they had to survive to deliver the item or information they were sent out to collect. And the ways Ninja had to stay alive were almost countless. They could make Kishaku compasses on the fly to never be lost. They could use mountain formations to never be far from water. They were pioneers in processed and preserved foods to starve off hunger for days at a time. And even if they didn't have any of that, they had textbook knowledge of what was safe and what was harmful to eat. And they had portable medication for every single slight of the human body.
I feel I'd take him more seriously if he just toned it down a bit or humanized the ninja. Instead, he sounds more like, as Turnbull described them, desperate, imaginative commentators. Like the way he talks about the mantra used in the Ninja Turtles cartoon. He says it might be something used by the shinobi in stressful situations, like when hiding or worried about being found. So why would a shinobi do that? Why recite a mantra while making hand signs when the sound could be heard by enemies or the action could distract him when he needs to be paying attention? And then there's the Kusarigama. Why would a stealthy and secretive ninja carry around a weapon that has a heavy ball on one end and has clanging, jingling chains that could give away their location? It's not very good for assassinations either, and also requires great skill to wield rather than something like a poison. The Kusarigama requires great skill and time and effort to master when a sword or spear is much easier to use. But you see, Gaijin never acknowledges these realities or questions. He simply says the ninja used them, and, well, that's because the resource says, so be it. I feel like I was so different than that when I was doing my grad schooling. I was never satisfied with what a textbook told me or what a museum plaque said. I always kept asking questions, probably to the point of annoyance, I admit. Like, I read that female lions did all the hunting, but the male lions ate first. Why did they do that? I asked. I was told that breakfast was the most important meal of the day. Says who? I don't think it's the most important. And then when I saw Gaijin Goombah in his video on Genji mentioning that the ninja used heated needles to help them guide their way when lost, I literally questioned it and researched it. And my research turned up that there is a way to make a needle a compass point by superheating it with a blowtorch and then cooling it next to a strong magnet. So then, after reading that, it made me ask, did the ninja have the time or patience to do this? Did they have a strong magnet handy at all times? If they were lost, why not use the position of the sun or celestial bodies and the stars to help them navigate like other cultures had done for centuries? Why did they seem to perfect this technique when it seems much more easy to use other methods? How did they even learn this technique in the first place? Who taught them? And why doesn't Gaijin Goombah raise any of these questions? Why does he just quickly say it and then move on? Well, because a museum plaque says so. And Gaijin Goombah drank that Kool-Aid without ever stopping to ask. Doesn't make sense that they would do that. I'm not saying they didn't do that. They very well may have do that. I'm just asking a simple question. Does it make sense, or are you just wanting it to be true? I know I just went on a super long tangent about the ninja, but I want to make a point here. What were the ninja? They were spies. They were specialists in espionage, sabotage, and misdirection. Some might have been martial artists or assassins, but that isn't their direct definition. Gaijin Goombah is a great content creator, and I will definitely end up looking at more of his videos in the future, because some of his stuff is really entertaining, while others, well, could probably use a second look. But as for his Which Ninja videos, where he talks about ninja exclusively, unless he does one that's just obscenely out of whack that y'all notice, I probably won't look at it. It'd just be me arguing again the authenticity of what he's saying. And since we can't verify the authenticity of the source materials Gaijin is working with, it'd just be a waste of time. Alright guys, that's it. I'm done with that one. Let me know what you'd like to see in my later videos, and tune in next time for my next video, whenever and whatever it's about. See you later. Take care.